My name is Henry Gonzales. I serve as Monterey County's Agricultural Commissioner. I want to thank the members of the press for being here and staff as well. Also want to thank a number of individuals that were the actual producers of the crop report. Christina McGinnis was very instrumental in putting a lot of this crop report together. She helped with the video and the layout, and there's so much kind of behind the scenes production, kind of the words and how the crop report looks. And then Graham Hunting, he was very instrumental in the numbers, making sure that they all are in there and that they are accurate. Both very, very big jobs and most of what the crop report is about. And then there's other staff members who have been very instrumental in the production of this crop report that I need to recognize. Shayla Neufeld as well, and also the video. We have a video that we're going to be watching in a little bit, so I'd like to thank our videographer, if I said that right, Alan Rona. Thank you so much. So I thought what we would do today is I'll make a few introductory remarks, then I'd like to introduce our panel and have them say a few introductory remarks, and then we'll watch the video that complements the crop report, followed by a question and answer period. And just for your information, we are scheduled to present the crop report to the Board of Supervisors later this morning at 11. So very good. So I'm just going to make a few introductory comments. First and foremost, the 2017 crop report was 4% higher in total value than in 2016. So we're up to $4.4 billion. That's billion with a B. And as is almost every year the case, I don't know if that's ever been different, but crops go up in value and they come down in value, and that's just the way it works. But some of the major crops had a slight increases between 5 and 8%. So that would be crops like our leaf lettuce, head lettuce, broccoli. They went up a little bit. But since they're major crops, of course, that little bit is significant. And then we had large swings in some of our more minor crops like bok choy, Napa cabbage, parsley, peppers, which they dropped anywhere from 20 to 52%. So again, big drops, but for some of the minor crops, so the impact is negligible, I'll say. Then we have some other minor crops that had huge increases, anywhere from 35 to 174%. So those would be crops like anise, artichokes, blackberries, chard, kale, leeks, and onions. And again, that just reflects the up and down of the crops from one year to the next for various reasons. They go up and down. That's just the way it works out for many reasons. But I wanted to stress that this year we're again above the $4 billion mark, and in the last 9 years we have been over the $4 billion mark 8 of those 9 years, which for me it really speaks to the sustainability of agriculture here in Monterey County and the economic strength that agriculture provides for us here. So every year we have a theme, just kind of a story to make our crop report a little more interesting than just a bunch of numbers for most folks. And so this year we're proud to have as our theme honoring our past, which is exactly that. And so what we've done to the crop report is we've included a number of historical photographs that we've been able to glean from local archives. We've had an article written by Meg Clovis, who she is retired now, but she was the cultural affairs manager for the County of Monterey. And then we also have some additional articles written by Norm Groot, from Executive Director of Farm Bureau, Another article from Jim Bogart. He's the president and general counsel of the Grower Shippers Association of Central California. And then also an article about cattle ranching from Scott Violini. He's the 4th generation cattleman here out of Monterey County. So those are in the crop report and kind of telling the story of the history of Monterey County agriculture. So I do also want to mention that $4.4 billion that is reported in the report, it is a gross figure. It is not what the farmers net. This is not their profit. From that $4.4 billion, they must pay their workers. They must pay their utilities. They must pay their loans or their taxes, their fuel, equipment, materials. Everything has to get paid out of that $4 billion. And that $4 billion circulates through the local economy a number of times, making the rest of us employed. But anyway, I wanted to stress that is not a net profit. That is a gross number, and we all share in that $4.4 billion somewhere down the line. So today I want to thank our expert panelists here who have agreed to again participate and help us with answering some of the questions about the production. I'll start here on this end. Kim Stemler is the Executive Director of the Monterey County Vintners and Growers Association. Next to Kim is Norm Groot, again Executive Director of the Monterey County Farm Bureau. And then we have Carolyn O'Donnell, Communications Director with the California Strawberry Commission, and Pat Collins, Vice President of Ag Operations with Ippolito International. So I think at this point we'll start on this end of the table, and if you could have, if you'd like, you can have a few introductory remarks, and afterwards we'll just go down the line.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you, Norm, for taking care of me.
You're welcome.
So your local wine industry continues to thrive, starting with the crop. The crop value is somewhat similar to last year, a little bit more, and excuse me, I need reading glasses to read any of this. The total value is around $239,027,000. Some of the things that I find really interesting are 38% of what is grown in wine grapes is actually Chardonnay. And then Pinot Noir represents 22% of what is grown. But the value of our Pinot Noir crop actually exceeds the value of our Chardonnay crop by about $600,000, with the value being $75,068,000 for the Pinot Noir and $74,655,000 for the Chardonnay. We're also seeing an increase actually in the acreage of Pinot Gris, which is based on demand. There is strong demand in the U.S. for Pinot Gris. It's a white wine, a light white wine. And then the other strong varietals are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Syrah. So locally, the wine industry, including the crop, is nearing $1 billion in value. So that's the vertically integrated wine industry in Monterey County, starting with this value of grapes, going into the winemaking that occurs locally, and then moving to the wine tourism and the wine that's sold. So our wine industry continues to grow and thrive, and it all starts in the earth.
Good morning, and thank you for being here this morning. I'm Norm Groot, and Farm Bureau members cover everything from A to Z and what they grow, artichokes to zucchinis and everything in between. And so we're keenly interested in how all the different sectors of Monterey County agriculture did in this last year and all years going forward. On balance, we see a steady year of increase for crop production in most crops here. The diversity of our crops help to manage the variations from year to year and highlights our resiliency to fluctuations in individual different crop sectors. Some of the differences in the values this year are due to market conditions, including what happened with strawberries, and I'll let Carolyn cover that. The shift in some crops is due to market influences with supply and demand, such as what happened with cabbages and peppers this year. But improving markets showed keen interest in artichokes, kale, caneberries, and other trending crops that foodies are really interested in these days. There's a significant increase in the value of our livestock as the herds were restocked with the heavy rains that we had in the prior winter a year ago. Made it available for grazing lands and helped improve their overall outlook as far as their herds are concerned. And as Kim just told you, wine grapes continue to be an important part of our economic sector here. Exports are also extremely important to our sector here, and even though we saw a downturn in some of those markets, we did see an increase in strawberry exports. Carolyn, again, will handle that. But exports, I think, going into the future are going to be really important to see how this tracks, given what's going on in our trade situations right now and which crops are really going to be impacted by what happens with the trade wars. Labor continues to influence the crops too, and as harvest crews continue to experience shortages of field workers, we're going to see how that plays out in the mix of all the different crops that we have here. But overall, I think we saw a pretty good year as far as a steady growth in a lot of those field crops. But that leads to the increase in mechanization and how that role will be played out in the future as crops are grown and harvested here locally and may possibly influence the crops that we see in the crop report in the coming years and how those crops are harvested. This crop report, and thank you to Henry and Christina and all who put it together, including Graham. The highlight this year includes the history of our agricultural sector here, and I think it's important to remember where we came from, how we got to this point with our intense agricultural cropping systems that we have currently, and what it means to our communities and our economy as we go forward. So we're proud to be featured in this year's crop report. As one of the agricultural associations, we celebrated our 100th anniversary last year, and so we've seen a lot of those changes throughout the years, and we're proud to be here this morning and help frame what's going on in the local farming and ranching community. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Carolyn O'Donnell with the California Strawberry Commission, and I'm pleased to be here with you in one of the best places in the world to grow strawberries. You are in one of the most productive areas here. You're someplace where it's not too hot, not too cold, soils are ideal, and so therefore you wind up with these tremendous numbers with strawberries production here in Monterey County and along the Central Coast. It's just the place. Also, California is recognized as a leader for the quality of the strawberries that come out of here, as well as the innovation and research that goes behind producing those strawberries. And that includes anything from breeding ideal varieties that are more resilient, also looking at research related to soil health and management of water, better water management, as well as pesticide reduction as well. And this is research that gets carried on throughout the rest of the world as well. And it's because of that recognition that we did indeed see exports go up. Our biggest destinations is where you can truck them, so that's going to be mostly in North America, so you're going to see most of our exports are within Canada and Mexico. But we are beginning to see that there's starting to be some global demand, and they'll pay for that airplane ride for those strawberries to get there. So you'll be continuing to see that as well. The numbers are a little bit wonky, and Norm alluded to the issues related to the market. For strawberries, they're very tender. They don't last long. You can't store them like potatoes or onions. And so if they all come on to the market at once, that tends to depress the price. So that will impact the overall value. So weather is the story behind strawberries always. We don't grow strawberries in greenhouses here. We grow it here outdoors because, again, we have the most ideal climate here to grow them. So the weather can influence how they arrive at market and how many arrive at market at the same time. So we saw a little drop in value, but overall we're continuing to see the production quality. If we had a longer timeline rather than just 2016 and 2017, you would see the per acre production and the efficiencies in producing strawberries have really grown dramatically with the new varieties that are available and new technologies. One other thing I wanted to note is that the Ag Tech Summit is about to happen down the road here, and the Strawberry Commission has been very active in helping to look at automation. Strawberries are a tough crop to pick with a machine. They're delicate. You can have on a plant half-ripe berries, not quite ripe berries, moldy berries, and it takes that human touch right now, and the automation has not quite caught up with being as smart as a human being when they're harvesting strawberries. But we continue to push forward. We continue to look at partners both nationally and internationally to look at ways that we can automate this harvest as well. And a nod to history, the great news is that the Strawberry Commission just recently released a documentary. It's on KVIE, which is a PBS affiliate out of Sacramento, and it's a history of strawberries here in California, which basically tells the story of the American dream, and that strawberries have facilitated immigrants' ability to build a family business for the past 100 years here in California. Looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Collins. I'm with Ippolito International, and I'm here to give a little bit of a reflection on the vegetable crop portion of the farm, of the crop report. Last year, 16 was a very difficult year, mostly due supply, and to Henry's point, the values in this report do not reflect the profitability of the grower nor the shipper. This is total revenue from the crops that we sell. So 16 was very difficult. Last year, if you'll look, you'll see in many cases acreage decreased slightly, but the value increased, which shows us getting that balance of supply and demand. Yields will increase with that because you're taking everything out of the field. We experienced some very good pricing in April of last year. And then in the tail end, when we do our transitions, we had favorable pricing due to some issues in the desert and then supply from the heavy rains in the early spring. And then in the summertime, the prices were depressed, or this might look a lot different. Basically, to everybody's point on the board, technology is really a key driver in what we're trying to do to meet the demand for the harvesting and the labor shortage that we're suffering. I can tell you that we feel it every day, about 80% maybe of what we need, and the rest, it's just we're competing with one another for labor. So we have to find solutions to that via technology. There's a lot of European interest in companies here, along with engineers here, that we are doing a lot of work to try and mechanize anything that we can. Harvest is obviously one of the first things we look at, but we also have a lot of technology going into the field as well for weeding, thinning, and some of the other operations that we do that are just as important, and the labor supply is just very difficult. So we're hiring if anybody's looking, and come on down. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Before we put the video on, I do want to mention that we have a limited number of crop reports available. We will have one for each member of the press today. We always print up a limited batch because inevitably we'll find typos, and I've already found one. So we'll be able to correct those, and on our online version will be online on our website right around 11 a.m. this morning if anybody wants to look at that. But like I said, the members of the press that are here today will give you a copy before you leave. I also want to state that the numbers in the crop report reflect what the grower receives for his crop in the field. It is not after it's been processed, such as for value-added bag salad, bag product. It's before that. It's what the grower receives for his commodities in the field. I wanted to be sure to mention that. Anyway, I think we're ready for the video. Should we hit the lights? And you may want to reseat yourselves. And so just start it as when it's ready. Thank you.
The Salinas Valley has always been a huge resource for farmers, although it wasn't really discovered until the 1860s. People were coming to California as gold seekers, but when they became disappointed, as so many of the miners did, they started fanning out to find good places where they could be farmers. And that's where they found the real gold. They found the real gold in Monterey County. And that's one of the reasons that people have come. I mean, things are changing, they always evolve, but it's still, whatever people set their hands to, it could have been wheat, it could have been dairy, it could have been sugar beets, it could be lettuce, it could be flowers. Everybody seemed to make the natural resources here into something good.
Farming is America's biggest industry. While most major American industries have made great advances in productivity, agriculture has outpaced them all. One of the reasons has been intense mechanization. However, some crops must still be harvested by hand, where such things as inspection, selection, cutting, or gentle handling are basic to quality. The constant flow of new and remarkable experimental equipment is on trial, all designed to relieve man's age-old burden of manual labor.
Labor is still a key part of the ag industry because the crops that we grow here are so labor intensive. So, and we're not going to mechanize overnight. We're not going to have robots in the field picking strawberries overnight. And until such time as we can address the labor shortage or immigration reform to where we have access to the number of workers that we need at the times that we need them, we have to do everything that we can to maintain a healthy, stable, legal workforce.
If you went back in time to Merritt Street and the farmers were delivering their grain, you would see wagons with nose to tail, mules hauling this grain all the way through Castroville to Moss Landing. Just lines and lines and lines.
Farm Bureau essentially covers everything from A to Z, artichokes to zucchini and everything in between, including all the cattle that we have. And so we are a one opportunity organization for all of the farming in Monterey County. We had about 13 offices around the county at one point in time, and not only were those areas where they could get technical advice, but they were also social centers. Farm Bureau did a lot of socialization of farmers and had a gathering point for people to come together and have picnics and parties and social events. So it was really a way to build the community also and to allow neighbors to meet each other, become interactive with each other, and find common ground and where they could cooperate with each other too.
In about the 20s, early 20s, there was an experiment up in the Pajaro Valley. And the experiment was a handful of acres of lettuce grown by Mose Hutchins. He grew this lettuce, he took it by wagon to Pajaro Station, and shipped it out. Because the GIs who were coming back from Europe had developed a taste for lettuce. Farmers in the Salinas Valley picked up the lettuce, and all of a sudden, row crops, with the help of the Spreckles irrigation, became the crop. It was so lucrative that the Salinas Valley Index says green gold found in the Salinas Valley.
Los Braceros are a necessary supplement to our domestic crews. In Spanish, braceros means a man who works with arms and hands. But in American lingo, they are called lifesavers.
Spreckles had maybe 3,000 braceros working in the Spreckles field they were brought in for the war effort. They had work contracts, and they could stay for a period of time, and then they'd go back home. But this program was really pretty successful, and it lasted into the 1950s. The working conditions, of course, the labor camps were bad. The working conditions not so great, and it was finally there was a horrible train accident where a truck of braceros were stuck on the tracks near Metz, and a train ran into them. That was sort of the beginning of the end of the bracero program.
The future is impossible to predict, and it's even more impossible when it comes to agriculture. But I think that one thing this industry has always been is resilient and resourceful, regardless of the types of challenges or the issues or the problems that we've encountered for almost 100 years. We've always managed to stick around, to stay in business, and to thrive. And I think that that's a credit to the people engaged here in agriculture in Monterey County. They've always been progressive, forward thinkers, innovators, and that continues to this day. And I think that that will sustain Central Coast agriculture in the future. So I'm hopefully and cautiously optimistic.
Today, farming is an easier, more profitable occupation. Improved crop varieties and scientific methods have skyrocketed farm production. Machines have taken over most of the muscle work, making farm life easier and more profitable. So take a tip from thousands of other progressive farmers who have renewed their weary, worn-out pastures. It's easy to turn grass into gold.
The top 10 for 2017 is the same top 10 in the same order that we had in 2016. As a matter of fact, you can go all the way to the 13th crop in the top crops, and they're the same as they were in 2016. And that, again, speaks to the stability of the crops and the change that does occur from like what you saw in the video back in those days. Continues to change, and I'm sure will continue to change in the future. Just some of the numbers do change year to year, but that's always the case. I do want to make another mention of organic production. Organic production seems to always be a bright spot, and this year as well, there was an over $25 million increase in organic production. So another highlight for us to know. In the crop report this year. So anyway, with that, I wanted to open it up to the members of the press. Questions of the panel? Yes, sir.
So where's cannabis in all this?
So cannabis, we really only started producing cannabis this year, this calendar year, and most likely we'll have cannabis in the crop report in 2018. But if we do that, we'll likely have it as an addendum to the crop report and not mixed within all the other commodities. And that's because this crop report has many uses, not just that it's a mandate of the Ag Commissioner to produce this report, but there's many uses for this crop report. Bankers use this money, this report to figure out who they're going to loan to whenever there's disasters. And federal funds need to be made available. The feds will look at this report to see what is the value of agriculture that they need to assist with. So it's in the regard to the federal government that we need to be careful how we list cannabis in the future. And so we plan to include it for 2018, but as an addendum to the crop report, so as not to get mixed with all the other commodities.
So you want to still respect the fact that it's not legal by federal standards, before you start including it in the crop report? Am I understanding?
We're going to include it in the crop report. It'll just be a separate addendum. We won't add it to the, but folks are going to be free to, of course, take those numbers in the addendum for cannabis and add it if they want to the other numbers, but we will keep it separate.
You mentioned a 4% increase for production value, but how does that keep up with just rising costs you see year over year in general?
Well, we actually have a page here in the crop report where we show the trends of the crops, and then we adjust for the consumer price index, so you can see how those trends work with the various commodities. And as always, there's some commodities that are going up and others are coming down, and it's really not a straight up and straight down line. They kind of bob down, bob up, and so that's just the way it works. Just like this year we had that 4% increase over last year. Well, there's other years we've had even more. So even the overall value of ag goes up and down as well.
What has been the biggest challenge right now? I mean, labor.
Labor has to be up there with and I think the members of the panel, by the way, you can direct your questions to them as well. But certainly labor has become a huge issue for us here, in particular because of the commodities we grow. If you go to the Midwest, where they have corn, soybean, wheat, these types of crops, there's not a lot of labor necessary. You saw in some of the pictures in the video where they have maybe a machine that's harvesting. We can't do that here because we have very succulent fruits and vegetables that pretty much have to be picked by hand. Only the human mind and hand can select those berries, that fruit, that vegetable that is just right. And so for us here, labor is huge. It's everything. If we don't have labor, we're not going to have agriculture here. So it speaks to the value of farm workers here. And I know that the farmers recognize this, and is evident by their concerns. Yes?
Can you answer in Spanish? Or can you answer in Spanish?
You want me to translate right here everything?
Yeah, well, I just asked the question, and I don't know if you can answer in Spanish.
I can answer it in Spanish,
Okay.
yes.
So, bueno, mencionó que labor es uno de los problemas. ¿Cree que ahora sabemos que este clima político, cree que hay menos trabajadores y esto está afectando las ganancias?
Seguramente es el problema, porque no solamente hay la escasez de trabajadores, pero para ayudar la situación, muchos de los agricultores les están pagando más, porque tienen que competir con otros agricultores aquí en el mismo Valle de Salinas, pero también en Ventura y en otras partes del país, y hasta en México tienen que competir contra ellos. Entonces han subido los sueldos. Al subir los sueldos, las ganancias son menos. And in English, sorry about that. We should have brought a translator here. So the question was how, if the worker scarcity has impacted profits. And so I believe it has, as farmers here are competing with farmers from Ventura County and other places in the state, and even in Mexico. They've had to increase their salaries, the wages for the workers, and so that really cuts into the overall profit. So, questions for the panelists, please. And maybe you guys want to address some of the questions that I've already taken a stab at to add more, please.
I would just add on the labor, with the crop report, that isn't able to tell us is how much was out there that we weren't able to harvest if there was something. All right, this value is
A profit that is, or product that is sold. Last year, we did leave some product in the field, but it doesn't capture that, right? It's hard to capture what that lost opportunity might be.
And to address the issue of what's most important to us, labor is extremely important, but so is water. We're going through a process right now to develop our groundwater sustainability plan for the Salinas Valley. And we're also looking at new regulations related to water quality and what farmers have to do on their farms to protect water quality. And those are all going to add additional costs to the expense of growing these crops. So water is becoming a much larger issue in the focus of the context of making a profit each year.
I'll add that even though water and labor are some of the larger cost factors for agriculture, there's so much more. There's so much more, and every regulation, every regulation, new or old, has a cost factor attributed to it. So it can be the death by 1,000 cuts if you look at all of the costs that farmers incur in their business. And so that, again, that $4.4 billion has to go to pay for everything, and it's really impactful here. That 4.4 is, again, just what the farmers receive for their crops in the field. That is not the multiplier effect, which we know from past studies increases the value of agriculture. It doubles the value of agriculture once you look at the impacts of agriculture. Oh, that 4.4 billion, when it comes out into paying all that it does pay here locally, it's about over $8 billion economic business for us here. No more questions?
Well, they can have one-on-one interviews.
Yeah.
Yes, as well. So anyway, I want to thank you all for taking the time to come here and to cover our crop report. Like I said, at 11, we will be releasing the crop report or presenting it to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the panelists.
Thank you. Great movie, you guys. Woohoo!